Welcome to Faith Reflections with Deacon Kevin. In each video, Deacon Kevin will be breaking open a scripture, a story of a saint, or part of our Catholic faith traditions, all to help us reflect and grow deeper in our own faith. Let's see what he has for us today.
Hello, and thanks for joining me again today. Today I'd like to talk about the 15th chapter of Luke. In that chapter we have 3 different parables, and they're wonderful stories. And today I'm standing here in front of St. Catherine of Siena because one of her quotes was about how much God loved us, that he was madly in love. He's mad about us. He loved us so much that he was almost mad or he was crazy. And I love that idea that God would love us so much that it's a crazy love, according to her. In the 15th chapter of Luke, there's 3 parables, and Jesus is talking to a group, a large group. They're comprised of sinners and tax collectors, and then Pharisees and teachers and rabbis. And the rabbis and the Pharisees are complaining to Jesus, "Why are you spending your time with these sinful people? You eat and drink with them, and we don't understand they're sinful. You shouldn't be doing this if you're really a man of God." So Jesus starts to talk about these stories, these 3 parables, and they're probably ones that you've all heard before. The first one is about the lost sheep. And Jesus asks this rhetorical question. If a shepherd had 100 sheep and one of them got lost, who among you wouldn't leave the other 99 and go look for that one? Well, if you think about it, nobody. Nobody's going to leave 99 sheep in the desert alone to go look for one dumb sheep that wandered off on its own because it couldn't follow the pack. It just would be a bad business decision. You could go find that one sheep and the other 99 could be dead. You don't do that sort of thing. And back then, being a shepherd was a serious career. You'd cut your losses. You'd lose one and you'd bring the other 99 home. But Jesus is trying to say that as far as the love of God, that one matters also. I will take care of them and I will look for that one also. The second parable is a story about the lost coin. A woman loses a coin in her home and she spends all day looking for it in her house. She turns everything up. She sweeps everything out, looking for this one little coin. Now, if you go back to the Greek version of that word coin, it represents the tiniest of coins back then. So to us, it'd be like looking for a penny. And this lady is spending the whole day looking for a penny, sweeping everything, looking under every object she can. And then when she finds it, she calls her neighbors and friends and says, "Rejoice with me, I found the coin that was lost. Come over and celebrate." So she actually throws a party after finding a penny. Crazy. It's just, these sinful people they're probably thinking that I have no value in this world. The Pharisees are always cutting them down. They're tax collectors and sinful people, figuring their worth is nothing. And Jesus is trying to show them that the smallest, tiniest coin matters to God, that he loves them all, and he's going to spend all day looking for them, hoping to get them back. And when he does, he's going to have a party and celebrate because they've returned. Our third story is the well-known one of the Prodigal Son. Great story. But this is really directed at the Pharisees. The boy comes to his father and he says, "Father, give me all that is mine of my inheritance." He doesn't say please or may I or anything. He demands it. Now think of the anguish of the father hearing these words. The Pharisees were probably flipping out hearing, what boy would do this to their parents? That's a direct conflict of one of the 10 Commandments of honoring your mother and father. In first century Jerusalem, that was a serious no-no. And this boy comes to his father and says, "Give me mine." So the father has to come up with a third of all the assets. So he probably had to sell some of his goats and sheep, had to sell some clothing, maybe some metals, to get the cash to give to his son. And then the son takes it up another step. As far as the Pharisees are concerned, he took the money a couple days later and he moved off to a faraway country. Now the Pharisees again are flipping out over this because he's leaving the promised land, the land that was given to them, the Jewish people, the promised land, and he's walking away from it. The Pharisees are probably flipping out at this. They're probably saying that this boy deserves death. And he goes to this land, and as we know, he squanders it all on loose living. Soon a famine breaks out. Now the famine represents that there's no God in his life, and he's empty. There's nothing going on in his life anymore. And so he ends up taking a job, and he takes one feeding pigs. Now again, this is a direct stab right at the Pharisees, because in Jewish tradition, pigs were unclean and deemed unworthy. In fact, in the book of Isaiah, it says that pork would be considered idolatry and sinful to be around. And later on, we hear that the boy was so hungry, this son, that he wants to eat the pods of the pigs. Again, the Pharisees are probably flipping out, eating with the pigs, eating with the food that the pigs would eat. Eating is a sign of fellowship. And to eat with the pigs, which were unclean, in a land that's not of God, leaving your father, boy, this guy couldn't get any worse in their eyes. But eventually, he comes to his senses. And he realizes that everything he had came from the Father. All his possessions, all his money, his education, even his very body was a result of his Father. So he decides to go back to the Father and seek reconciliation. But he also knows that maybe it was because the Father was so kind and gentle and loved his servants and his sons so much, he knew he could go back. So anyhow, the boy starts heading back. And as we know, the Father sees him coming. Obviously, he must have been looking for him, right? And he sees the son coming. Now, back in those days, an old man would never go running down the street like this man did, this father. He sees his father, he goes running to his son. And he puts his arms around his neck and kisses him. Back then, the father would stay at the house. Because of his age, people would respect him and people would go to him. It would never be the father going to them. And so again, the Pharisees are like, wow, what is going on here? And the son says, Father, I've sinned. I'm not worthy to be called your son. Well, honestly, none of us are. So he returns home and the father sees him coming. He runs out to him and he does 4 things. The father interrupts him in the middle of his speech. He's trying to make his confession, say he's not worthy and he'll be one of his servants and all that. The father knows his heart. He knows that he's coming to reconcile, that he's sorry for what happened. And the father does 4 crazy things. This father. First of all, he tells his servants, bring him the best robe and put it on him. Where do you think the best robe is? Who has it? The father has it. He has the best robe in the house, and he tells his servants to get my robe. What he's saying to the son is, you've come back home. You're going to be clothed in the glory of God, because the Father represents God. Second, he tells him to put a ring on his hand. Now, back then, in first century Jerusalem, a ring was like a symbolism of you're part of the business, you're part of the family. It's like a modern-day credit card. Now, you do the Father's work. And that's what we're called to do, right? When we come back to God, we go out and we do God's work. We become a light in this world. And we have that ring symbolically that the light of God is within us. We're working for God. Thirdly, he says to put shoes on his feet. Now, in the Hebrew culture, only sons wore shoes. Servants did not. But we're not servants. Now, we may call ourselves servants of God, that we serve God, we work with him, though. But we're truly sons and daughters of God. We're not servants. But we work with God and serve God, hoping to do his will. And the fact that he would put shoes on his son's feet after all the terrible things he's done to him says a lot, that he welcomes him right back into the family, that he's just like him, clothed with him, put the family ring on, he's wearing shoes again. And lastly, he says to slaughter a fatted calf, and let us eat and be merry, for the son of mine was dead, but now he's alive. Sacrificing the calf reminds us of the covenant with God. The innocent was sacrificed for the guilty. And eating together was a sign of forgiveness and fellowship, just like when the son was eating with those pigs or wanted to eat the pods of the pigs. The Pharisees would broil with anger over that, how he turned their back on God so fully. But not the Father. The Father has this crazy, mad love for his Son and for all of us, sinners, tax collectors, and Pharisees. And lastly, that's where the last son comes in. The older son comes in and he says to one of the servants, "What's going on up there?" And the servant's happy and he rejoices. "Your son has come home. He was lost, but now he's found." The older son can't deal with it though, can he? And the father comes out to him and says, "My son, everything I have that is yours already. It's always been yours." But the son can't deal with it. And he refuses to go into the party. And so much like the Pharisees considered authority their rules, that they had control, that they told everyone what to do. And to them, that was authority, and that they had the power over other people. It wasn't about being part of a family and being part of God's family. No, the Father, he asked them to join the party, but they can't overcome their own pride and their own jealousy. Lastly, think about the three stories that Jesus told. He talks about a coin, which is an inanimate object. Who in this world would be inanimate, probably? Maybe like an atheist or an agnostic. Someone who's totally devoid of God in their lives or totally rejecting God. Then a sheep. Well, it's living. You can have a little bit of emotion with it, but, maybe it's more like the lukewarm relationship people have with God. I'm spiritual, but I don't go to church. I don't really spend a lot of time with God. God's okay, and he's part of my life, and he's there when I need him, and I'll pray when I need him, but that's about it. Or the son who realizes that he's sinned, that he's made a mistake, and he takes credibility, or he takes account of that. I screwed up. I sinned greatly, and I don't deserve to be called your son. And he goes to the Father, and he asks for forgiveness and mercy. And the Father's there with that crazy love, putting his own robe on him, putting a ring on him, shoes on his feet, having a big party, because that son of his who was dead. So many people in this world seem dead to God, but he's come home. And all of us have that opportunity to come home. And God there with that crazy mad love that Catherine Luciana talks about. He's just waiting for you to come home and just be loved and be part of this family. God's heart is the same today. He's looking for his children who are lost, waiting for them to come back with open arms and invite them back fully, because he loves everyone madly. He's in crazy love with you. He's in crazy love with all of us. Amen.
Thanks for joining us for this Faith Reflection with Deacon Kevin. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave us a comment with what you would like Deacon Kevin to talk about next. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss his next upload.